5 years, 9 events, 27 speakers. This is Ripple Effect.
The power of words is a catalyst for success.
I was shattered, and I was not okay with that.
With a record of 1-0, my fighting days are behind me, thanks to great mentors.
Welcome to Ripple Effect 10.
Good evening, and welcome to Ripple Effect. My name is Don Levitt, and I am honored to serve as your host tonight. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for braving the surprisingly wet and stormy day. We hope you find your experience here tonight uplifting and inspiring, and we promise we will do our best to make it worth your while. Tonight is something of a milestone for us, the 10th Ripple Effect event produced by Wavetronix. Ripple Effect is built on the idea that even the smallest pebble can create waves. We hope that the stories you hear and the things you feel tonight will have an impact on you, and that your experience tonight will ripple out and affect other people. Of all the events that Wavetronix puts on, this is my favorite. I love Ripple Effect, and I love being part of the production process. Over the years, I've gained a lot of respect for each of our presenters, and a deep appreciation for their authenticity and their vulnerability. Brene Brown, an American professor, researcher, and writer, has said, "Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It is having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome." She says, vulnerability is not weakness. It is our greatest measure of courage. Well, tonight you are going to hear courageous stories about the power of people, the power of the words we say, the power in the things people teach us, and the power in accepting what is and letting people in. Our very brave presenters have worked really hard to get ready for tonight, and I believe their vulnerability and their wisdom deserves to be celebrated. We invite you to listen to them, and we promise that you will see these three people differently, that you will be inspired by them, and hopefully their messages will help make you and your lives a little better. Our first presenter for Ripple Effect 10 will be Michael Waldron. Mike joined the Wavetronix team a little over 6 years ago. He currently serves as the support and operations manager, and he contributes to new development program for first-year employees as a teacher. Mike is also an ordained minister and currently serves as a campus pastor at the Teen Challenge Treatment Facility in Orlando, Florida, where he was born and raised. Mike and his wife, Francine, are the parents of 4. Their kids range in age from the upper 20s to 10th grade and high school. Mike loves weightlifting and fitness. He is an avid reader, and he enjoys golf in his free time. He also plays guitar, sings, and counts theme parks and beaches as some of his favorite spots. We tend to never forget the negative things that are said about us, but how often do we hear and remember the positive? Is it possible that words play a bigger role in our lives than we maybe give them credit for? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Waldron.
Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt me. I can guarantee that most of us in this room probably used that statement at one time or other. Maybe some of you still use it now. I would venture to say that we also realize how false that statement really is, right? Words can be devastating. I know the ones spoken over me when I was younger absolutely were. They had lasting impact. They can do damage or good. Growing up, I was pretty normal, if there is such a thing as normal. It's a blonde hair, blue-eyed boy down the street, right? I had pets, I had a best friend, was in Cub Scouts, played soccer, even did some dangerous things like making blow torches with hairspray and lighter in my friend's closet, and I set my neighbor's yard on fire. Yeah, I did that. It was fun times. But for the most part, things were pretty good. My family, they were always very encouraging, always telling me how much they loved me. In fact, even when I felt like I was doing nothing in life, just always how proud of me they were. And it took me a while, but I learned to appreciate parents like that, who not only believed in me, but they told me so. So again, growing up, things are pretty good until the 5th grade. And that's when things went downhill, got really difficult. And that's primarily due to a massive increase in my weight. I just started eating everything in sight. I can't tell you what started it, why, but I do know this, that from 5th grade to my senior year in high school, my weight issue dictated everything in my life. Dictated my actions, my involvement with others, and most importantly, it dictated my self-esteem. Self-esteem is kind of a funny thing, right? Because high self-esteem can be literally that bedrock source of confidence. It can be that driving force to pursue your aspirations. High self-esteem can be a catalyst for your success. But low self-esteem, well, that on the other hand, that can be like a 5-ton weight around your neck that drags your life to the bottom of the ocean and keeps it there. I can tell you my self-esteem growing up, not good. In fact, I quickly learned that the reason my self-esteem was so bad was because of the negative words spoken over me. Now, this started in 5th grade, so the self-esteem issue really didn't kick in until junior high school. But that's when they got hard. In fact, even my yearbook was signed Stubby, Chunky, and above all things, Butterball, like the turkey. Girls would pass by me in the halls and poke my belly to get me to laugh. And they would call me Pillsbury Doughboy. It wasn't a lot of fun. In fact, on top of the name calling, there was bullying. In fact, there was this one kid, his name was Mike Holder. And I remember it because it was so close to my own. And I'm sitting at lunch one day in 7th grade, and all of a sudden he just starts razzing me, going off about my weight, my height, and threatens to beat me up after school. I don't know what it is with this kid. I didn't do anything to him. He just didn't like me, right? So I'm coming home. I'm riding home my little banana seat bicycle from school, right? And I go to take a right to where my house is out of the other neighborhood. And I can see Mike Holder down the street over here with his buddies out in the street yelling all kind of obscenities and different things at me that I won't repeat here about, come fight me, you this and that. And listen, if I'm honest with you, I've never been in a fight in my entire life. I've never even punched anybody. And back then, that kind of confrontation, I would absolutely just back down. I'd run away from it. So I just kept pedaling and went home. My entire junior high school years, they weren't about academics or athletics. They're about being made fun of and being bullied. Now, high school, on the other hand, that was just a more civilized version of junior high school. In fact, by that time, I became very introverted, extremely insecure, dealt heavily with anxiety, depression, kind of went really dark in those days. I didn't have a lot of friends, kind of a homebody. In fact, to top it off, I just gained even more weight in high school that dragged my life even further to the bottom. In fact, there's this one story specifically. I'm in 9th grade, and I'm eating lunch. I'm sitting across from this girl who I'd had a crush on since the 5th grade, right? So I'm just sitting there eating, and I'm just happy to be sitting there with this girl. And in the middle of us eating, she turns to me and she asks me this question. She says, "So Mike, tell me, what's it like to have 3 chins?" I can tell you what that's like. I remember exactly where I was sitting at. I remember the room where the table was at. And I remember I sat there absolutely humiliated. Words, they may not break your bones, but they can absolutely crush your spirit. And mine that day was shattered. Not only had I had so many things negative spoken over me in junior high school all the way up through high school, but unfortunately what happened is I began speaking those same negative words to myself. I called myself loser. I called myself fat boy. I remember being at JCPenney trying on clothes and making fun of myself in the mirror. I had no self-confidence. I might look like on the outside I had it together, but on the inside I was a mess. Now I will say, in my senior year, from my junior to senior year, I lost about 60 pounds. I lost a ton of weight. Of all things, I used Slim Fast. And so that was a huge change for me, huge confidence change. I had my first girlfriend after I graduated high school, and I started getting into running and lifting weights and just fell in love with fitness. And that's carried me to this day. It's a passion of mine. But here's the kicker about the whole thing is that even with all the newfound muscle and the weight loss, all those negative words spoken of me had done permanent damage. And I saw myself and much of the world through that same negative lens. Now, when I was 19, that's when things really shifted for me. So I'll give you a little background on this. By the time I was 16, I started kind of just wondering who I was. I grew up in a denominational church. But by 16, I remember taking this world religion class and just, where I was going didn't do much for me. And I just kind of started looking for something to validate myself, something that was real. Well, at that same time, my sister was a few years younger. She came home and I remember she became a born again Christian. And I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. But I know she was totally different after this event. In fact, she dressed differently. She talked differently. She acted differently. And she would invite me to some of these services with her friends, and I would go, and it didn't really do a whole lot for me. Until about 6 months down the road, I had just come out of a broken relationship. A girl had left me, whatever. And one of my sister's friends called me and asked me to go to these youth revival meetings. Well, listen, I'd been to some of these, I didn't really want to go, but I told her I'll go, and let's just be real. I went because the girl was hot. I mean, I didn't go. I didn't care about the meetings, right? Who cares? It's how she got me there, right? So I go to this youth auditorium, and it seats probably, maybe 300 kids in this auditorium. And I sit on the very back row with this girl. Her name was Becky. And I sat there the entire service. Now, mind you, I'd been to some of these before. I sat there the entire service, and I just wept. And I cried. And at the end, the evangelist came up, and he gave an invitation for anyone who wanted to receive Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And this is no joke. I ran to the front. I was the first one up there, and I hit my knees and just crying out to God to save me. And I got up, and I was an entirely different person. It was like an out-of-body experience. I was born again. And I immediately jumped into all kind of youth ministry. I started doing missions trips and street witnessing and all kind of drama. That's where I got my start with miming. And it was great. That was 30 years ago. But what I want to talk about a little bit tonight is what's transpired in the last 6 to 8 years. But before I do that, there's an incident I want to kind of share. I think this has a lot to do with the subject matter tonight. It was a company called Tom Barrow Company. It was my first estimator job, and it's actually what led me here to Wavetronix. It was an HVAC distributor. And I'm at lunch one day, and the two guys that I work with or manage, they're out of the office, and one of the salesmen comes back and pops into my office, and his name was Mark Nail. Now, this guy, super nice, middle-aged gentleman, no joke, had a full-on Tom Selleck mustache, dressed to the nines, right? And he walks in, and he comes in and kind of leans against the door frame, as he always had this tired, exasperated look. And he says to me something along these lines. He says, Mike, I want you to know that I think you're the only one back here that has a decent head on his shoulders. I think you're doing a good job. Keep it up. Now, you have to understand, at this point, I'd been at this job about maybe 3 years, and I was frustrated. I was over my head in the amount of workload. I literally would wake up in tears some mornings because we had so much to do. Couldn't keep up with it. Was aggravated with office politics, nepotism, you name it. But what he said to me that day, he didn't even say a lot, but it's what he said. It impacted my life. In fact, I remember coming in the next morning excited to do this, the very same job I had been doing and dreading. And it's all because of the power of words and what he said to me. And fast forward about maybe 12 years, and I met my wife, Francine. Get choked up every time I think about this part. She said on the audience, actually, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary this last March. She is an amazing woman. I think the most beautiful thing on the face of the planet. She has been a game changer for me. The positive, affirming things she has said to me. I mean, everything regarding, it doesn't matter whether it's my career, whether it's stepping out in faith to do things that God's called me to do, even my appearance. Let's just be real. Tonight, I wasn't worried about speaking, it was what I was wearing, right? So she speaks these positive things that has just changed everything for me. So about 8 years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I started stepping out in ministry. Now if you remember, I mentioned doing youth ministry when I first gave my life to the Lord, but I struggled to make that transition to adult ministry. But I started believing God's word, what he said about me. I can do all things through Christ that gives me strength. Right? Nothing is impossible to him who believes. Jeremiah 29:11, I know the plans I have for you, plans not to harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. I started believing those for myself. I started actually believing that I could be and that I could do things I never thought were possible. So I started teaching. I started leading Bible classes at my church. I took over baptisms for 1.5 years. Started doing one-on-one discipleship with men. Even some men that pastors would pass off to me because they thought they were too much for them. It was absolutely amazing. The funny thing is, growing up, I always wanted to be a high school history teacher, but I never pursued it. Now, those very things that were always in me, I hadn't changed anything. I hadn't become a different person. I was just starting to believe the positive, faith-filled words of my life. And what was in me was actually coming out and flourishing. I would say maybe 4 years ago, probably about 4 years ago, I received in my heart a call from the Lord, said, Pastor. I just know it, or know it like I know the back of my hand. So I started looking for opportunities to step out and exercise that call. So there's a program called Teen Challenge. It's an international faith-based ministry. It works with men and women who have life-controlling addictions, everything from alcohol to drugs, all kinds of things. And we use a relationship with Jesus Christ to overcome that and be successful in that. Well, I've been ministering once a week at this program, but they called me in January of this year, and they said, hey, would you like to come on staff part-time to teach our guys? Our phase 2 program, which is an eight-month program. So I can tell you that since January of this year, every week, every day of the week, when I'm not traveling to Wavetronix or seeing customers, which lately it's a lot, I'm teaching either before or after work for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And I can tell you, honestly, it's absolutely incredible. For someone who was a full-on introvert when I was younger, I've become a full-on extrovert, if that's even possible. Something else that happened at the beginning of this year, probably a just hallmark of things in my life, is both my wife and I ordained as licensed ministers by our pastor. Just a, for me, life-changing moment, a culmination of 30 years of just walking in the Lord and serving Him. Absolutely amazing. Back when I was younger, I actually used to like to write stories. I had this thing with 5th grade when I actually gained the weight. I would write these 20, 30-page horror stories. I don't write that anymore. But I would sell these to my friends, and I just always had a passion for writing but never pursued it. Well, this last month, I just published my very first book. It's called Rideshare Adventures in Evangelism. About, I guess, maybe a couple years ago, my wife stepped down from her job as director of the private school at our church. So I was looking for some ways to make some extra money. And so I started driving Uber and Lyft. And so this book is a true account of stories and me sharing the gospel with people, praying with people to give their life to the Lord, to be healed. Just some amazing interactions I've had with people. And then within that book, I kind of mix in some teachings about showing Christians how to share their faith on an everyday basis. The funny thing is about everything I'm telling you, I grew up one way with just a mindset of beat down because of words. In the last probably 6-7 years, I've seen a massive shift, but it's completely coincided with my work here at Wavetronix, which is amazing. In fact, whenever David Arnold is here in the room, I have to give you a huge thank you. And those who made a decision to hire me, I have grown immensely, both professionally and personally. Wavetronix is a very different company, very different culture, as I'm sure anyone who works here could attest. And I know for some, even probably remotely out of Utah, it can feel a little uncomfortable. It might rub them wrong. But when I came here, it was literally like I came home. And what I mean by that, it was like the back of my hand. It was very much how I live my own personal life, how I do ministry. And what I mean by that is the positivity, the encouragement, the teamwork, the collaboration, the recognizing that we have faults in areas that we can improve through personal development. And so I've seen this impact just coming on board Wavetronix and any opportunity to teach. I've seen my life kind of parallel and grow both personally and professionally. Words, they can have a massive impact on us. They can greatly affect our self-esteem, both positive and negative. I mentioned self-esteem earlier. It's kind of a funny thing, right? Because high self-esteem can be that bedrock source of confidence. It can be that driving force to pursue your aspirations, that catalyst for your success in life. But when you have low self-esteem, man, it's like you're sitting at the bottom of the ocean with this 5-ton weight around your neck and you don't know how to get out. I can tell you my self-esteem today from where it used to be, night and day, 180-degree turnaround. Like I said, I've become from full-on introvert to almost full-on extrovert. But if you ask me if I have doubts, do I struggle? You bet I do. In fact, it's a daily battle for me to believe God's words over my own, to believe what He says about me, rather than the negative, doubt-filled words that want to fill my mind and lead me off course. We all have the opportunity to let words define us. In fact, if they defined you in a way you're not happy with, maybe it's time to change that. Start surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, right? Speak positive, faith-filled words to you. People who see the best in you and tell you so. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 15:33 that bad company corrupts good character. I can tell you it's 100% fact. The people that you surround yourself with make all the difference in the world. So if you're sitting in this room tonight, and I don't care if you're 22 or you're 82, you have the opportunity to let words change the course of your life, either for good or bad. And I'll tell you, not only just the words that other people are speaking to you, but ultimately the words and things that you say to yourself. And I'll close with this. It's a proverb. It's 18:21. It says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. I mean, life and death are in the power of what we say. And those who love it will eat the fruit thereof. Words have power. They can lift you up or they can tear you down. So the question I leave with you tonight is this. What words are you believing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next presenter this evening is Ryan Lindsay. In many ways, Ryan and Wavetronix have grown up together. Ryan joined Wavetronix in February 2002. I mean, they were literally both babies. In 21 years, Ryan has participated in technical training, customer service, and support, even when we didn't have any customers to support. For the last 11 years, he's helped develop product management, and he says he loves the work, but especially the people at Wavetronix. Ryan grew up in Southern Utah and has been married to his wife, Amy, for 27 years. They did go to the same high school, but they didn't officially meet until college, which Ryan says is probably a good thing because he was a jock and she was one of the artsy goody two-shoes. They have raised 5 kids together, and the oldest 2 have recently married great people. Ryan says he happily claims them as kids number 6 and 7. How did you become the person you are today? Did you get here alone or did you have help? Ryan has learned that life is full of help-needed signs if we just look for them. Please welcome to the stage, Ryan Lindsay.
"42 years ago this month, my dad passed away. And I finally understand what it is to be a mentor and how fun it is to cry. Now, if any of you are like me, you might just be a little bit uncomfortable in your chairs. Personally, I don't like hearing stories about death. I don't like talking about my dad's passing. I've never even believed in mentoring. So of all the things I could talk to you about tonight, why would I choose to talk about something so personal and about a topic I don't really even believe in? Partly it's because it's fun being on a stage in front of strangers and crying in public. But the biggest reason is because I am who I am because of the passing of my dad and the fact that it's happened in my life, it still has in my life. And tonight, I'll share with you some of those experiences that have helped change my opinion. I'm not sure why this happened, but when I've ever thought about mentors or mentoring, I envision those self-professed gurus who think they have all the answers and are super excited to share them all with you. But thinking back to my dad's passing, those jaded opinions have been changed. What I now recognize and know to be true is that a real mentor is somebody who is authentic, who shows genuine interest and concern in others, and is deliberate in their intent to help them. And I'm going to share some of those experiences with you tonight. I grew up in a small town called Santa Clara, Utah. It used to be a small town, at least, by St. George. And so everybody up here discovered how nice it was and started to invade. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and our family's amazing. We all get along great, we love each other, and we have this almost, I don't know, feel-like loyalty to each other. Our dad passed away on October 21st, 1981, after fighting lymphoma for 5 long, painful, and very emotional years. Dad was only 45, and I was 8. So suddenly my mom is a young widow, left alone to raise the family that she and her high school sweetheart had created. They were an amazing family. When I think about my mom and this idea of mentoring, one thing that stands out very clearly is the lesson of persistence, even including firing off an occasional assault rifle now and then. Like your moms, I think of my mom as the example of perfection in everything. So for example, after I graduated from high school, I worked with a really good friend and his family in their concrete business. And we spent those summer months pouring concrete in the busy, busy city of Panguitch, Utah. That was a hard job. It was grueling for me, labor intensive, and I hated it. And it cemented, the pun intended, my desire to go to college and have an office job. Now, as the very first day of work was over, I ran to the nearest payphone to call my mom and complain and tell her how hard it was. Now, some of you here listening online may have just heard a word you don't fully understand or recognize, and that's a payphone. But once upon a time, long before we had cell phones, there were things called payphones. And you would take a coin, which may also be a foreign concept, and you would put it into the phone, make a phone call. The payphone I used was located in the very bougie KOA campsite where we were living for the summer. So I made the phone call to my mom and she answered the phone. And with tears in my eyes, I told her how hard this job was. And I wanted to quit and come home. And she listened to me complain for a few minutes. And then she gave me a very short response, but kind of a life-changing response. In a very typical, kind and loving voice, she simply said, "Ryan, you can't quit. You gave him your word." That was all it took. Then a few months later, I was living in Berlin, Germany as a church missionary. And I was super homesick the first few months. I lived near an airport, the biggest one in Berlin. And I could see planes overhead every day. And I would think every day, just 22 more months. Just 21 more months. 20 more months before I could go home. But because my mom's the example of strength and perseverance, never once I think to call home to complain and ask to come home. And I'm so thankful for her and that loving lesson she taught me when I was in Panguitch. So I ended up loving my time at Panguitch and those 2 short years in Germany. Working at Panguitch forced me to grow up and make some very important life choices. And those 2 short years in Germany put me on the right path for the rest of my life. So there's no doubt that our family plays a critical role in shaping us and forming us into who we are. And in my case, my mom and my brothers and my sisters were the perfect mentor, those real mentors that I needed then and even now. And I'm so thankful for them and for their love. Now, sometimes the mentor we need is just a friend or a colleague who sees a need and steps in to help when they can. And a man named Tony Kuhlman was that for me. Tony was one of my dad's best friends. They used to love to go to high school basketball games together, and they would yell to the refs so loudly that their poor wives would go sit on the far end of the court because they were so embarrassed of their husbands. And they also used to go and watch softball games together, or play softball games together. And in Tony's words, they were the rough and tough guys of the team. And to me, that means they were the best on the team. I'm not sure that's true, but that's what I think. So when my dad found out that he would soon pass, it was Tony he went to and asked him if he'd watch after his family when he was gone. And Tony was true to his word, because he said, "Yes, of course I will. You don't have to ask me that." In the following years, Tony would come by our house often to check in on us, see what we needed for help, and how he could be any kind of assistance to us. I always thought of Tony as a sort of father figure, as someone that I could trust and go to for help. And he always helped me then, and even now. But it wasn't until my mentoring perception changed that I recognized how he was one of those true mentors that was so important in my development. I've never met anybody who has said, "I loved being a teenager, and I want to go back to those days again because they were so great." And I'm no different. My teens were not my best time of life, and I am thrilled and maybe a bit lucky to be where I am today. Some of you might have called me and my friends delinquents or hooligans, but we were just kind of dumb kids. We did dumb things. Sadly, and unfortunately, we thought it was tough or cool or something to go around and get into fistfights. So unlike Mike, I have punched people. We also thought it was fun to make cardboard cats, complete with reflective eyes, and put them in the roadway just to watch how cars would react when they saw them, which was kind of fun. But one of those pastimes got me arrested, and the other one put me in front of a juvenile judge. Now, I was kind of one of those cocky, arrogant kids who needed to be put in his place on more than one occasion. So sometimes Tony and I would go for drives and just talk about life, have an RC Cola, and just visit. All of these talks and drives we had while we at Wavetronix have been taught to call a crucial conversation. Stakes were high, emotions were strong, and views differed. Now, not that I dare express my true emotions and thoughts to Tony, because while I was maybe a dumb teenager, I wasn't a stupid one. And I knew that being sassy or snarky to him would be very unwise, as you can see from this picture. So it wasn't so much as a conversation as it was a crucial get your act together lesson. But Tony wasn't angry or threatening in any way. He asked me a lot of questions. He'd ask me, what kind of life do you want? What kind of future do you want to have? And are the things you're doing now leading to that kind of an outcome? He made it very clear that the things that I was doing, the choice I was making, the path that I was on, were not what was best for me, and for sure not what my mom and dad expected out of me. So that moment was a very important moment in my life as I started to shift the way I thought about and viewed things in my life. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I took some of my kids to meet Tony for the first time and to visit with him. And just like he was with me, he was the same way with them. His first questions were, are you good kids? Do you have a good dad? And they said, no. And then he said, I have to answer to your dad at some point, and I have to give him a good report. And then he asked them what they're doing in life then, and what plans they had for their future. And then in June of this year, I took my oldest daughter and her husband to go meet Tony. And it was the same process. The first thing he did was ask them questions. He asked them, mainly Megan, did you marry a good man? Are you kind to each other? And then he told her the experience of my dad asking him to watch after and care for the Lindsay family. He then gave them other sweet counsel about how to love each other, the importance of holding hands often, and other sweet lessons he learned from life since the passing of his sweet wife just a few months earlier. During the same visit, he told us about a 12-year-old boy that he was mentoring, whose father had recently abandoned their family. And he was teaching that young man how to grow and care for tomatoes. There's just something about Tony that drives him to be this father figure and a mentor. And he's actually told me that he believes that's his purpose in life, is to be that kind of a mentor for other people. And he does it beautifully. What I'd like to leave you with tonight is perhaps a different understanding and a feeling for the word mentor and mentoring. Because my mentality and opinions have changed completely. So I still speak a little bit of German. I looked up the word mentor to add it to my vocabulary. And you all know that German is a hard language. They have these super long words, they're hard to pronounce and to remember. The word for mentor in German is der Mentor. But I did learn 3 very meaningful synonyms. Der Lehrmeister, which is a master teacher. Der Vordenker, which is a forward thinker or a mastermind. And der Ratgeber, which is a counselor. These 3 words and their definitions describe perfectly the kind of mentors that I had and still have, and they reflect the kind of mentors that we should be to other people as well. My mentors have taught me that mentoring is not a checkbox to check off or a task to take off of your list, but is a persistent effort to care about somebody enough to teach them and to counsel them, to help them see their better selves. It's the effort to be authentic and to ask those hard questions and to have those difficult conversations. It's just basically being willing to do all you can do help somebody become better than they are when you first discovered them. Thanks to my mom's example and Tony's example, I'm trying to be a mentor, trying to be better in my life as a mentor. So in my family, I've had the chance to coach all my kids in baseball, basketball, and football, and other sports. And that was a great way for me to spend time with them and to be around them, and I loved that. And while it was important to teach them the game and how to compete, it was just as important to teach them how to become good and decent people in society. And hopefully they and their teammates are maybe a little bit better off because of me being their coach. And in my church, I've had the opportunity to interact with dozens of 11 to 18-year-old young men, trying to teach them and mentor them how to see the world a little bit differently, how they can be a positive influence and make a huge difference. So by no means am I in the same league as my mom or Tony Coleman, but I'm trying. So here's my new undeniable truth. It's a fact. Every single one of us are who we are because of people in our lives. And of course, I would have much preferred to have had my dad as my mentor. But I was fortunate, lucky, and I would use the word blessed, to be surrounded by great mentors, those true mentors who are authentic and deliberate and intentional, who help guide me and shape me into who I am. And even now, as this old man with gray hair, I'm still lucky to be surrounded by these great people. So I invite you to take a few minutes and think about the people in your lives that have helped you become who you are and get to where you are. Because I promise that none of us have done it alone. Show them your gratitude and appreciation. And be aware of ways that you can mentor somebody else. Whether it's helping somebody learn and grow in their career, or helping somebody learn how to navigate life. Step up and be intentional. Leave people better than you found them. You'll both be better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. For a small fee, Ryan will be signing copies of his juvenile arrest record. I am told the proceeds will be donated to the Cats Aren't Speed Bumps Fund. Our final presenter tonight is Holly Odekirk, who joined Wavetronix in 2020 and is a member of our talent development group. She says the highlight of her job is helping new employees understand the Wavetronix culture and why we do what we do. In 2019, she earned a master's degree in organizational leadership and behavior, and she says she has a passion for helping people thrive at work. Holly grew up in a military family and has had the opportunity to live all over the world, but now calls Utah home. In her free time, which as a new homeowner she almost never has, she enjoys trying new restaurants, playing games, especially golf, and spending time with her loved ones. Holly knows from experience how much life can change, sometimes in an instant. Life is a hard teacher, and Holly's experiences continue to shape her approach to life today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Holly Odekirk.
Some of you may be surprised to learn this about me, but pretty much since the time I was potty trained, I've been really independent. In fact, during the hiring process here, Rob Smith told me that my greatest opportunity for growth would be learning how to work in a highly collaborative environment, and he was right. But I don't think that I developed this independence by accident or coincidence. I believe my parents taught me very deliberately, albeit in different ways. This is my dad. My dad is my hero. He's a 30-year veteran I've looked up to my whole life. My dad taught me that what one man can do, another man can do. And he has always pushed me and challenged me in just the right way. He instilled in our family that we can do hard things, and that whatever happens, we'll figure it out. He encouraged me to develop drive and ambition. And because of that, he often got to see me at my best. He taught me to work hard and dream big. This is my mom. My mom is my best friend. While she didn't wear a uniform as a spouse, she also served and sacrificed for our country for 30 years. My mom taught me how to love others and myself. If my dad taught me to shoot for the stars, my mom reassures me that I will always have a safe place to land. My mom taught me that change can be an exciting new adventure, or maybe a needed fresh start. Unfortunately, she often sees me at my worst. And that's because she taught me that it's okay to be imperfect, and that my value is never up for debate. She taught me that I can fail and try again, because I can always pick myself up and learn and grow and change. Together, they inspired me to be brave and confident enough to try anything, and they made me feel safe and secure enough to get back up when I fall. When I wanted to move to Europe alone for the first time, I called my dad, and he reminded me that I was smart and capable, and I shouldn't be afraid to go after the world. And I did. When I decided that being on a mission was no longer healthy for me, I called my mom, who reassured me that I would be returning with honor because I had brought it with me in the first place. And she planned a last-minute flash mob at the airport to make sure I felt that, and I did. As a result, they sent me out into the world equipped with fearless confidence and unyielding self-esteem that has made me fiercely independent in every stage of my life. When I was 3, I needed to learn a song called Choose the Right for a program at my church. And in all the frustration a 3-year-old can feel, I said, "Mom, why can't I ever choose the left?" When I was 5, I wanted to be a taxi cab driver when I grew up, because I thought driving still represented the ultimate independence. When I was 7, I prided myself on waking up and getting ready for school alone. When I was 10, I managed my grades and my homework without help, only showing my parents to claim rewards. And when I was in middle school, my mom coached me on how to have conversations with my teachers so that I could resolve my own problems. And when I was 16 and could finally drive, I pretty much just disappeared. In fact, I remember telling one of my friends that I actually kind of missed my mom driving me around, because I felt like that was when we really got to talk. I didn't know it then, but I was starting to feel the extreme effects of my independence. When I was a senior, I took extra classes online so that I could work nearly full-time and earn money for college. And when I got to college, I had finally arrived. All my hard work had paid off. I had scholarships covering my housing and tuition, and I had 2 part-time jobs. And I was ready to springboard into adulthood. The rest of my life couldn't come fast enough. And then this happened. It was a Friday in February of 2009, and I was a freshman in college. I was heading home that weekend to welcome my dad home from a 1-year deployment in the Middle East with the unit he commanded, when my roommate told me that her ride home had fallen through. So I said I would wake up early, we'll leave, take her to Heber, and then I would head home to help my mom with the yellow ribbon ceremonies. But I never made it there. Instead, I was hit head-on in Provo Canyon, and the oncoming sedan acted like a ramp, launching my truck into the air, rolling several times before it landed driver's side down. My injuries were extensive. The most obvious being the crush injury to my left leg as I was staring at the sole of my shoe the wrong direction through the steering wheel. I would later find out that I had broken every bone in my left leg, ankle, and foot except my femur. Next, I discovered the compound fracture in my left arm when I went to explain something to the bystanders, and my arm just kind of fell back down. And finally, I told the first responders about the excruciating pain in my back that I later found out was caused by the vertebra in my spine being crushed so badly that the doctors actually just removed them and replaced them with metal cages. My world had been shattered, but not in the way that you might be thinking. Yes, there was broken glass and broken bones, and these injuries are definitely difficult and painful. But the most challenging part of this experience for me was the way every ounce of independence I had worked my entire life to build was gone in an instant. And I was not okay with that. I was not okay that for days I couldn't feed myself. For weeks, I couldn't move in any way without assistance. If I wanted to just roll over in the middle of the night, I had to call and wait for a team of nurses to come adjust me. I was not okay that the medications I was taking made it hard for me to focus and understand the conversations that were happening around me. I was not okay that when I finally left the hospital, I still had to schedule my showers and my bathroom breaks. Yes, my bathroom breaks with my mom. If I wanted to do anything even remotely social as a 19-year-old, one of my friends had to agree to be my caretaker for the evening, bring me home, change me into pajamas, and humiliatingly put me into bed like an infant. In a particularly low moment, I was talking to my parents and crying about how unfair this was, how I had done everything I was supposed to, and I was spiraling quickly. When my dad looked me straight in the eye and calmly but firmly told me to stop. He reminded me that I was alive, that I had a roof over my head, food in my belly, and clothes on my back, that I had an incredible support system of family and friends who had shown up in full force to help me, that I was fortunate enough to be financially secure, and that my mom was working diligently to make sure that my health care would be provided for, and that I was going to work hard and bust my ass to do anything I needed to have a meaningful and fulfilling life from then on. And in that moment, I became resolved to do so. In another moment I was not okay with, my mom was helping me shower or change my wounds or something equally mortifying. And I began crying and apologizing. Apologizing that I needed her. Apologizing that I'd become such a burden. That I wasn't the independent, capable person that I thought I'd been raised to be. My mom stopped and she grabbed my hand. And she said, "I know this is hard for you, but I love that I get to take care of you again. It's been so long since I've been able to." And I felt sad in that moment that I had isolated myself so much from letting my mom or anyone take care of me. These two interactions with my parents, like always, shaped the way that I faced the world moving forward, with courage and gratitude. Up until that point, I had prided myself on being a workhorse, the first to arrive, last to leave, willing to grind. But that identity had been shattered, and it just couldn't be my source of self-esteem anymore. Instead, I've learned to see others' pain and to sit with them in it in a way that I couldn't before. I'm working on valuing my compassion and not just my contribution. I try to advocate for accessibility because I know what it's like when getting from your car into a building or sitting in uncomfortable seating might be the most difficult and painful thing you have to do that day. I became increasingly grateful for the health I did have, and I fought for ways to continue to use my body. I had to give up basketball and volleyball and running altogether, so I picked up golf and yoga and weightlifting. I learned to make pain not necessarily my friend, but a peaceful companion that I still mostly try to keep hidden. I learned to avoid events that would only have accommodations like bleachers or picnic tables. I started keeping equipment in my car, like lawn chairs or pillows and blankets I could use to prop myself up. Or I would just mentally prepare to be in pain and medicate later. But for the most part, I was making it work. Until 10 years later. I was sitting in the driveway talking to a friend, and I noticed my lip went numb. I thought it was weird, and I mentioned it, but I didn't think anything else, and I went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, the entire right half of my skull had gone numb. I was fortunate enough to work for a company that had an on-site medical clinic. And so as soon as I got to work, I went to the doctor and we started testing for emergent situations like a stroke or a brain tumor, something that might be threatening my life in that moment. But in my heart, in my gut, in my soul, I knew what was happening. I had become the 4th generation of my family to be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, following my mom and her dad and his uncle. In simple terms, MS is an autoimmune disease where my immune system attacks my nervous system and damages it in such a way that it prevents my brain from communicating with my body effectively. Because of this, the symptoms can be pretty much anything, depending on where your brain was attacked. And it's different from person to person. My MS looks and feels different than my mom's. And hers looks and feels different than her brother's or her dad's. Unfortunately for me, MS is also an inflammatory disease. So it took any of the health challenges I was already having from the car accident and has made them harder. Pain has gone from being my peaceful companion to being a screaming toddler that just makes it hard to focus on anything else. Arthritis has gone from feeling a little stiff and achy on occasion to feeling like a tin man that's lost his oil can. And with the car accident, doctors would talk to me about when and how I could expect to improve, when I would heal and my life could go back to normal. But with MS, we just talk about how to slow it down, how to manage it better. And that shift has taken a mental and emotional toll that I haven't faced before. It's also brought its own new challenges, which is fun. Because my immune system is always on hyperdrive, the fatigue is real. I feel like a bulging cell phone battery that just can't hold a charge. And now, with the body that I have fought to keep, I have to be strategic about when and how I use it. I have to schedule my chores out about a week at a time because I can really only do one a day, if that. I've had to change things about my showering routines and other elements of getting ready. And truthfully, I've had to just simplify and let go of a lot. Because my immune system is now like a damaged electrical current, regulating my body temperature is a major challenge. In the heat, I get nauseous and dizzy, and if I can't cool down fast enough, I'll pass out. So I had to change the way I dressed. I've had to add equipment to my car, like cooling rags and water and fans. And I've had to make new rules, like no golfing if it's 90 degrees, and if it's 85, I ride in a cart. The cold is also debilitating, but in a different way. The cold makes me feel like an old computer with too many programs running, or too many Thursday updates I've snoozed. It just can't seem to run smoothly, and it's painful to try. It stings like when you put cold hands under hot water, and it gives me headaches. So I've had to get serious about my winter coat and boots. I often sleep with gloves and socks on, and my heated blanket and my heat pads have become essential. The adjustment has been harder than I anticipated. I thought I had been through this before. But this can be lonely and frustrating. And if I'm being really honest, it's scary to look too far down the road. But I'm determined to do this differently than I did before. I'm learning to say thank you instead of I'm sorry. I'm learning to ask for help and accept my limits. I'm trying so hard to let people see me struggle and take care of me. I've come to understand that when my dad taught me that what one man can do, another man can do, means someone else has been through this before me. And when my mom said that when I fall down, I can always pick myself back up, doesn't mean that I have to get up alone. So if I ask you to set up tables and chairs because I'm trying to preserve whatever juice is left in my battery, or I have to reschedule or cancel a meeting last minute because the Tin Man is just not getting out of bed that morning, or if I'm a little bit snippier or shorter than I really mean to be because the pain toddler has been screaming all afternoon, I need your compassion and forgiveness. I need your help and your patience. I need you. And I'm okay with that. Thank you.